Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I have a special guest on, Greg Behling. He's in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, and he is, we kind I don't really know specifically how we connected, but we've connected through social media and other investors, and he's doing a lot of good things there. And I wanted to have him on my channel, and he has his own podcast, so we can talk about that. But welcome, Greg.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. And it was Jason Lum is who
That
introduced
is
us.
right. That is right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
living over in Hawaii. He was like, "Hey, I know somebody who invests in Pittsburgh." He's like, "You should get to know him." So yeah, that's how we got introduced.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit, or tell my audience a little bit about what you got going on and what, I know you do fix and flips, but what else you do in the real estate market?
Yeah, so my journey really started about 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I used to be a chemist and I,
Wait,
I
wait, wait,
got
what kind of chemists? Like
so
legal
quality.
chemists or
What? Yeah, like a legal premise. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I wasn't like
Okay,
Breaking
okay.
Bad or anything. But I mean, I did test drugs, so I mean, that's my job. I was a quality control chemist on the raw material team for like a very large pharmaceutical. It just a generic company. You might have heard of them, Mylan Pharmaceuticals. They got bought by a subsidiary. Well, they merged with a it was an off branch of Pfizer called Upjohn at the time, and they're now under the merge are now called Viatris is their new name. But yeah, when they merged, our plant had been losing money for a long time. And we kind of all saw the writing on the wall. So it was like, hey, have to make a decision on either, shit or get off the pot, right? It was either
You
go
get
back in, it was either go back into the corporate world or try to do something on your own.
and then you guys came out with the vaccine. No, that's a whole different.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, it wasn't us that came up with the vaccine, but we did work on hydrochloroquine, which was which was big during COVID. We released a lot of it from our plant, so
Yeah,
yeah.
so going back, sorry to interrupt you, but so you
No, you're
saw the
good.
writing on the wall, and then where did that lead you to?
So I had just so we bought our primary residence at the time, and like probably like 2 years ago, like from the time that happened, and I had completely flipped it. Like it was I like to call it the landlord special. If there was something wrong, there was just paint over top of it. Like all the piping had like just like cakes of layers and layers of paint, and like all the doorknobs had paint on them, and like the door hinges and stuff like that. It was just it was a nice good bones, but like the inside was just dull. It was dingy, it was dirty, it was just like yeah. But I ended up getting that house for a good price, and we flipped it. And we purchased it for 137 with full seller's assist. So the purchase price ended up being like 127, and then we also had them fix the sewage line because it was cracked.
Mm.
So like all in all, like I mean, we got the house, for a decent price. We put like 30 or 40K into it. And now the house is probably worth 225 to 250. So that was kind of like unknowingly like my first real estate deal. Like kind of like I was like, oh, okay, like I can see how this works. But what really that showed me was like I could do the handyman work. So that's actually what I did. I opened my own handyman business, Behling LLC. It's now called HouseWiz. So I just do small residential remodeling, and I do just like handyman stuff.
I love that. So in the process, also you got your real estate license?
So the handyman thing was always to get into real estate. I was like, okay, like what's a good way to get into real estate? I don't really know anybody that's doing it. Like eventually, like I look around at like all the people that are rich, um, not even rich, wealthy. And when I say wealthy, it just means that like they can come and go as they please. If they need to take a Friday off, they take a Friday off. If they want to go on a weekend trip, they go on a weekend trip. If they want to do this, so really time freedom is what I'm chasing. Um, and with time to get time freedom, you have to have that income level that lets you to do that, or just passive income in general. So like I took a look at like everybody I kind of wanted to model, and there was one thing in common, and it's kind of always stuck with me, and I've always seen it, but it's like real estate. Like everybody who has time freedom is in real estate somehow, commercial, residential, people that own rentals, it was just like you're either flipping houses making money, or you're like it's just anybody I knew that had any kind of time freedom or wealth. It's like one thing in common is they all own real estate. All so
or even lending money, right? Or even lending money
yeah,
to real estate people. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how was that flip experience for you? Was it everything you expected? I mean, did it go just completely smooth and no problems, or
Are we talking about the flip of my house or the flip? My first flip as an
your
investor.
first flip as an
Uh,
investor?
so so yeah, I mean, we can talk about how that went. It actually didn't go all like it went perfect. I
Oh,
mean, it. I mean, there was a couple things here and there. But I mean, all in all, it was a complete win. Got the deal. If we want to back up a little bit, I actually joined. I knew nothing about real estate. I didn't have a single clue, so I ended up joining Wealthy Investor. Just like an investing group, and ended up like they give you the blueprint of how to find a deal. And so I started searching Redfin, Zillow. I had been doing this before, but I had a little bit more of a game plan. And I found this house for 160,000. It was about like 3 months into the program, and I was like, man, this is a nice house. Like it's a split entry. So a lot of people out in the West call it a Rambler, but we call it split entries here. But it was a 3-1, but truly it was a 3-2, because it was just on the MLS as a 3-1 because the bathroom wasn't finished. Um, and this girl that owned it was in super distress. Like, I mean, she had just gotten like broken off with her like either fiance or husband. They had a kid. She moved to California for a job. The house was sitting vacant. She had completely torn it up, with like just try to do like DIY stuff. So the house was just a disaster to anybody else like that wanted to personally buy it. And I walked in here, I'm like, okay, this is nice. Like this is perfect. Like the house is in good shape. Like this girl just came in here and started in the kitchen, and then she started in the bathroom, and then she started doing projects in like a room, and then she started doing stuff downstairs, and like the whole house was completely just not finished. So I walked in, I was like, this is great. Like, bathrooms already demoed. I don't have to demo it. Like that's to somebody else like that's a huge deal, but to me that's perfect. I was gonna demo it anyways. Bathroom downstairs was in decent shape. Just like needed like painted, and the basement. I mean, the basement was like perfect because it basically already had been demoed. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was awesome. I bought it. I ended up offering 130K for it. Got the deal. All in like after closing costs and stuff were probably like 145, and put about 45,000 into it, and sold it for 275 for like a $60,000 profit. So
nice. And
yeah,
that's what people don't realize too. Like you were saying, the lady, the seller was in distress. So, you helped her from that standpoint.
yeah.
This is a house that is sitting vacant that nobody can live in because it's not finished, right? So basically you brought this house back to life. You helped out the seller get out of whatever, problems she was in. And now you put this house back on the market for another family. And that's what some people don't realize. A lot of times they look at like, fix and flippers and they're like, oh, you're the ones jacking up the prices in the housing market and whatnot, and you're causing all these issues, or investors and whatnot. But you're actually providing a service that put a house back on the market for someone else.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I would say I probably was one of those people before I started investing. It was like, oh, these people you see like $100,000 like difference between where they bought it and what they're trying to sell it for. And like, okay, you look at it, it's only been off the market for 2 months. You don't realize like how much money costs, how much time goes into fixing stuff, how much people actually charge to do stuff. Um, I mean, there's some investors, and I think the investors that go in there and just put lipstick on a pig is kind of what gives that like a bad impression. Um, but I mean, honestly, I would say the consumer is the person that causes the problem, both on the buy side and on the sale side. Um, at the end of the day, grandma down the street wants top dollar for her house that hasn't been updated since 1970, and people still pay for it. Like, so what are you doing? And then my house is completely renovated, only sells for like 20 or 30,000 more. And it's like, well, the 20 or 30,000 more that went into it is just my profit. That's not necessarily like all the extra stuff that goes into like, fixing the kitchen, fixing the bathroom. So like really when you look at it, if someone buys a distressed property or say like just like an outdated house for like 20 or 30,000 less than somebody who bought a brand new house, they're going to have to sink another 50, 60, 70,000 into it to get it to that same point my house is at. So I would say we're actually driving prices down.
And that's you doing a lot of the work yourself too, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did everything. I did everything. All the work was done by myself. So, the $60,000 profit, I say, I mean, if someone would have hired some help, they probably would have only been like 10,000, 15,000, in profit. Because the labor itself would have easily have been 30, $40,000. So easily.
Yeah, it sure looked like because you were documenting it and I was watching it and I was like, oh man. But it looked like you were having fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like doing it. It was great to like have that rewarding. The sellers that actually ended up buying the house, they were like, you did such a great job, and like we could tell that you really took time and effort. They didn't get an inspection, and they said like one of the reasons they didn't get an inspection is they knew that they didn't need to. They were like, yeah, we could tell that you really, you know, really did a good job in the remodel of the house. So, yeah, I mean, that was really rewarding hearing them say that.
Yeah. So where can people check out your videos of you doing the work? Because I was following you and I loved it. So just real quick, like where can people check it out if they want
Um,
to see what your work?
so you can go to just my Instagram. My Instagram it's G Behling 23. So that's G and then B as in boy, EHLING 23. You can maybe drop it in your descriptions. It's
Yeah.
pretty hard to spell. I've actually been thinking about renaming my Instagram handle just because
Oh,
like when I made it when I was like what, like 15, I didn't think about like, oh, maybe
yeah.
down the road people are gonna want to look it up. So I
Yeah.
need to make it
No.
like, good guy Greg or something like
Yeah,
that. Something like really easy.
we always talk about that because even like some of mine, I was trying to do the fire movement, so the financial firefighter, but like on Twitter, you can't put periods. So I had like F_I_. So like some people, it's hard for them to find me because of the underscore, and it's like now I can't really change it, and so yeah. So
Yeah.
we always talk about that, but yeah. If so, anyone out there wanting to start an account or channel or podcast, really put some thought into it. That once you start, it's difficult to maybe rebrand or change yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It's really funny, like, just talking about that in general. Like you don't think about that kind of stuff, but it's massive when you're thinking about branding. I just did like a whole revamp of my handyman, and like I did a doing business as name, because my business was just Bailing LLC. And the same issue I have with like my Instagram handle is like when I tell people Bailing LLC, like they don't know how to spell Bailing.
Yeah.
So it's like so if I'm like, hey, just look up Bailing LLC, they're gonna be like a month later, they're never gonna be able to find it. So
Yeah, I had to ask
um
you how to say it before we got on today. I was like, how do I pronounce your last name just to make sure?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I actually renamed my handyman business to House Whiz. I thought I liked it. I thought it, I did a little bit on chat GPT. Like I like searched like 50 names and renamed it and then did it
Ah,
like 50 more times and did like 50 more names. And I took like a bunch of like I took a poll on Instagram to see like what people like the most. And yeah, people liked Housewiz. So I ended up doing that.
I like it. So,
Yeah.
while we're talking about branding and social media, so you also have a podcast, and then where did
Yes.
that name come from?
The Gap. So that was actually probably thought out a little bit more than anything else. I started the Gap podcast about a year ago actually, and I think I have 12 episodes. But all the what the Gap is it's called. So my intro is careers, education, and the lifestyle and the journey through it all. Um, and what it's meant to be is a place that people can come and maybe pick out an episode that they want to listen to. So if I have somebody on that does, marketing, I'll put in like, hey, this person, understands the power of marketing, or, you know, I'm still working on putting it like the ad copy of like, so when people search, like they can find stuff easy. But essentially what I'm trying to do is create like a library of different career paths, different educations, different just a place that people can go and be like, hey, I was thinking about doing this, like let me see if Greg talked to somebody in a financial field, or let me see if somebody he talked to a plumber, let me see if he talked to a doctor, let me see if he talked to a somebody doing e-commerce. And what I really wanted to do was shed light on just how many different jobs there are in fields. I mean, because in high school, you're like taught there's like these four fields. And then you go to college and you really don't get taught like, okay, here's real life. So you go to college and you're getting basically taught the same thing. And you just pick like this career field when you're 18 based off of something that you maybe thought it was cool when you were like a freshman in high school. And then you get into the real world and you're like, oh, this sucks. Like this job sucks. Like I never thought I'd be doing this. Like for example, as a chemist, I kind of knew this was the thing. They gave us a little heads up in college, but you go to a college for chemistry. You come out, you can really only get one job in chemistry, and it's quality control. So if you don't want to work quality control, then you're screwed, like unless you go back to school.
Yeah.
And people just don't realize that. You go and get like a psychology degree, that's worthless unless you go and get your PhD. Like absolutely you can't do anything with that degree, like unless you go and get further education. So yeah, I just wanted to shine light on that, and then also like go into like how people change careers. Like everybody thinks it's like, oh, if I change a career, I'm a failure, or I'm a loser, or like my life's a mess. Like everybody else has it figured out. And the more and more I get into it, the more I realize that nobody has it figured out. There's people at 50 that are still changing career fields. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's I think that's why we connected so well, and I think that's why I invited you on my channel. It's that same mindset. I never thought that I would ever want to leave the fire service early, and it was something that I just thought like I was going to do this the rest of my career or my life, and things change, and people look at me crazy, like you're saying. Like sometimes it doesn't mean you're a failure wanting to do something else or change careers, and that's definitely where my mind's at right now. Is I'm focused on some other things and trying to provide different things for my family. But I think that's the thing, right? Like you're saying, you go to college or you go to school, and then you kind of get stuck in this path. And then a lot of times you don't want to start over, or you don't want to be looked at as a failure if you change or do something different. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I've been in the firehouse for 17 years roughly. And it's like, I had a great career, I think. And but there's sometimes things change and you want to do some other things. And I'm trying to really force that on the younger guys that, hey, you can have a great 10-year career, but give yourself options, give yourself some other opportunities out there, if you want to leave early. And I think that's where your podcast comes in and my YouTube channel comes in, is just trying to help people see the opportunities out there.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many opportunities to get jobs and make money. I mean, there's not a shortage of ways to make money out there. I mean, so if you're staying in a field or a job because the money is good, I guarantee you could probably find the same pay somewhere else or the same, you know, whatever you're looking for. I guarantee you could find it somewhere else. So like if you hate your job, just start, feeling it out, like talk to different people, doing different things. And at the end of the day, like, that's sometimes how millionaires are formed, because they jump into a different thing and they get connected with the right people. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, everybody thinks you need 5, 10 years to be successful. I've talked to people that are like successful in 2 or 3 years of what they're doing, and they completely leapfrog what they were doing prior, like 15, 16 of like what you were saying, of the firefighter. Like, um, so yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not a lack of opportunity out there. There's a lack of knowledge for sure.
Oh, totally agree. You're talking about finding, other job opportunities or even, maybe touching on economy somewhat. But like, so are you from or born in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area? Like, how would you describe that market or that area?
Yeah. I was born in Pittsburgh. Uh, like what exactly? I would say we're just like a blue collar like area. Houses are affordable here. They're not like crazy out of control. There's some areas, like some nicer areas like Upper St. Clair, some places in Wexford, like Sewickley, like there's definitely pockets of like higher end homes that are, I would call like more unaffordable to like the average person. Um, Newer homes are starting to get up there. Like, you're starting to look at 500,000, 600,000, 700,000. But I mean, I would say your average home in Pittsburgh is probably around the 300,000 range. I want to say that's our median sale price anyways, but like you can easily find a house in the hundreds, 200s, 300s, depending on where you're looking at. I mean, and you can still be 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes from the city. And there's still like a lot to do. So I mean, it really just depends on what exactly you're looking for.
Yeah, that's what blew me away when I first saw like the prices of, like you're saying, you can find things in the 100,000 price range and what. And I just was like, I never thought, coming from Hawaii, I was just like, are these like full regular houses where they're done and you can live in them? But yeah, it just blew me away. But yeah, there's a lot of places like that, in the mainland, and people don't realize that. And I think that's what I'm trying to promote, that awareness to people in Hawaii, that there's a lot of places out there that there's places where the rent is above what the mortgage might be, and you can actually generate some income. And I think that's what I love about Pittsburgh. And I haven't been there yet, so when I do get there, we got to hang out and do some stuff and
Yeah, hit me
show.
up anytime.
Yeah. But you have a lot of stuff going on. I see you got the real estate license, the your
Yeah.
podcast, your handyman side, the fix and flip. So what primarily, I guess, is your main thing or that you're working on right now? What would be the number one thing you're focusing on?
So the number one thing I'm focusing on right now is the handyman thing. So I mean, I can go through some trials and tribulations that I'm going through right now. Um, so I had this successful flip, and that was, um, hey, can you pause this for a second?
Yeah, yeah,
We'll we'll,
yeah.
we'll put a cue right here. My sister's calling.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I can go through some trials and tribulations, because I've seen a lot of that lately. Um, so okay, so the flip was successful. But after the flip, like I realized a couple different things. I'm like, okay, that took a lot of time, it took a lot of energy, it took a lot of resources.
Wait,
And the
hold on.
main
Didn't you get hurt too? Did you get
yeah,
hurt during the flip?
yeah, I tore my
Okay.
ACL
Ah.
skiing, like in the mid, like
Oh,
wow, I was, well, yeah,
oh, okay,
yeah.
okay. I thought it was from the flip itself. Okay. It was
No,
skiing.
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
But I tore my ACL like during the flip, and I didn't think I was gonna be able to finish the work, um, because I tore my ACL and I couldn't bend, dude. I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. Um, but I gave it like a week. I ended up being able to like do like everything that I like needed to do to finish the job. but I mean, it wasn't good. My knee was so messed up, man. Like anytime I did something weird or like I popped it out of place, it hurt like a mother. So but yeah, that was like another realization. It was like, okay, if I plan to do this work all the time, if I get hurt, like that's gonna like really set me back. Um so it's just like a bunch of things added up, and I was like, okay, let me like let me look at this. Like I don't have enough of a runway yet with cash. So let me use like this, this like let me get into wholesaling. Let me try to wholesale for a little bit. I ended up partnering up with two other people, um, try to wholesale down in Atlanta. And dude, it just like it's not working. Like I've been doing it for since we so I've been doing it since I closed on that flip, which was like, in July or October. And I haven't gotten a deal yet. I've gotten stuff under contract. We have some things that are like kind of like I have this deal that is a probate deal. And I mean, it's gonna be a grand slam if it goes through. Like, I mean, we're talking like maybe $100,000 assignment fee. Um, but I mean, the thing is like I've got to get it to that point, and the lady's like being super unresponsive. Um, but I mean, wholesaling is an absolute grind, and no one talks about how hard wholesaling is. Um, and like the other thing too is like it just takes a lot of consistency. So, and right now, money is like the number one object for me. Because the other trial and tribulation that we're going through is we ended up closing on a house out in Wenatchee, and it's in Washington State, and we bought the house for 530,000, and we were supposed to fix it up, and it was supposed to be like, hey, quick, like just plumbing, all it needs finish is plumbing. I ended up taking over it from another investor that failed. um and it was a failed flip. I took it over. I refinanced it into my name. I didn't see the property ever. The guy was being like super not helpful at all. And there was two other investors that were involved in it, and they were like, "Yeah, the house is good. Like all it needs is plumbing. All it needs is plumbing." So I'm like, "Okay, like why am I gonna distrust them?" But lesson learned: like always walk the property with a contractor and see what needs done. I would have never have taken over the property knowing what it needed done. um, but yeah, essentially like that house is bleeding me dry. Because my mortgage payment on that is like $5,700 a month,
Dang.
and it's vacant right now. And so like pretty much all of the profit I made in my last property is going into this property. Um, so cash is just like number one virtue right now. And the wholesaling is not bringing money in. It's just costing me more money because I'm texting. So like text, I'm set up as a proper business texting. It's, I do it through Smarter Contacts. It costs $700 just to have the software, just to text like for 10,000 people. Um, and the thing is I'm not consistent doing it because I have to do handyman jobs to get money. Um, so I'm right now I'm looking for the consistency side of it. And the consistency side of it, I've kind of came to the realization it's like, okay, I'm never going to be consistent reaching out every single day because I can make $80 an hour doing handyman work. So like, why am I just not hiring a VA to do cold calling at $10 an hour if I can make 50, and the difference of that hour is $40, or at $80 an hour it's $70. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now is I'm focusing on the handyman because it's today money, and I'm gonna hire a VA because like what no one talks about in real estate is it doesn't matter if you close on a deal. If I get somebody to say yes right now to a deal, and I'm gonna make $100,000, even if it's a wholesale, unless that closing is in 2 weeks, you're probably not gonna get paid for 30 to 45 days. If it's a flip, you're not getting paid for 6 months, like minimum probably, because it takes 30 days to close on it, 30 to 45 days to close on it, because it's a retail transaction at the end of the day, unless you're buying it from a wholesaler. And then even if it's a fast flip, a month to do the work, and then let's just say a week to do some showings and get an offer, and then another 45 days to close. So right there is 2-3 months just that's an easy flip. So like if you're doing any kind of medium flip and you don't get like an offer right away, or you do like a regular closing, I mean the timeline from start to finish is I would say easily 6 months. So and that's what really no one talks about online is, hey, like it takes a while to get paid in real estate. So you better have a plan B.
Yeah. And so kind of something you touched on too got me thinking, like, you, like you said, you got hurt during your flip, and you probably, your calculations, your numbers probably had you doing most of the work, right? So let's say, you did get
Yeah.
seriously hurt where you're saying like you couldn't complete it on your own and you had to hire someone. Now, that's other things that people probably don't think about. Like, if I'm factoring in me doing all the work, and what happens if I got hurt? And now do I have the funds to have to get someone to complete the job? Because like you're saying, you're not going to get paid until it closes, and how many months after that? So I'm sure that was somewhat of a kind of a scary process to go through.
Oh, it was very scary. And like the thing about it too is like being a contractor and doing that, if someone calls me and is like, "Hey, can you come fix or finish this job?" My price just doubled because now I'm going to have to go through and
Mm.
figure out like what this person did, where they were at, and like pick up from there. And like yeah, it was just I wasn't in a good spot either to hand it off to anybody. Like it would have been a nightmare. Like I would have gotten charged so much for someone to come in to finish my job. Yeah, I knew for a fact that like if I had to do that, it was not going to be good. Um so yeah, I mean luckily something like that. It was like but yeah, I mean, and that's another thing too, is like especially for like newer investors, is like you don't have the context, you don't have the experience to go to a contractor too and be like, hey, I'm gonna bring you work. Especially in an area where maybe like contractors, if contractors aren't a dime a dozen, like here, it's very hard to get a contractor to do a job cheaper just because it's vacant or like, whatever. Like at the end of the day, like if I'm a contractor and someone's offering to pay me a $2,000 to do a job or $10,000, who do you think I'm going to go with? Like, well, that's the difference between a flipper and a homeowner. Is a flipper wants you to do a job for like, $2,000, but a homeowner is willing to pay 10,000. And that's where you're seeing it right now is most contractors are just going and taking that homeowner job and making, two, three, four times as much. I mean, so I mean the handyman, I mean the construction guys here in Pittsburgh, I don't know if you've had this issue or you've ran into this, but it's hard to find somebody that's going to do like good work for a cheap price.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Even like Hawaii, I just talked. So some of the firefighters, they do flips and all that, and or like you're saying, homeowner type rehabs and stuff. And he said the exact same thing. He goes, "Yeah, I don't want to deal with investors. I don't want to deal with flippers because like you're saying, like they want it at a lower cost, right? They're trying to fit it into
yeah.
their budget and they want a certain price. But a homeowner, they're going to live there. They want certain things, and they're willing to pay the price a lot of times. And it's exactly to your point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I now look at it pretty often, and that's like one of the reasons I want to do the handyman thing is I want to build that handyman side to a point where maybe I'm doing, $2-3 million in revenue a year, and I have crews running specifically for my like fix and flips. Like that's all. Like I always have a crew that like if I have a house I'm flipping, they're running all the work. So, because you got to look at it this way: if you're hiring a guy at $30 an hour, whoever you do it, unless they really are giving you like the greatest price ever, most of the time if you're hiring somebody at $30 an hour, they're charging you 60 an hour because of overhead costs and everything like that. So like your price pretty much doubles per hour on someone for the owner to a make a profit and b like actually employ those people. So like if I'm running a crew, like people will be paying that cost and they'll just be like, hey, if time's available, I'll either just hire more people. But like once you build that into your business, then it's not as much of a cost. And I think that's why you see the most successful like real estate people running their own crews on jobs, like on flips and stuff like that. At least people that do like a lot of flips, they have like dedicated crews or even they'll sub stuff out, but like at the same time, it's just like they have a system dialed in where that's all they're using. Like you have to have so much work that literally those people work for you.
Yeah,
Essentially, whether they subbed out or they're actually worked for you, you have to have so much business that they never even pick up the phone to answer for somebody else.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, I love it. I love following your story, your journey. I mean, like anyone that wants to, get some rehab work or a flip, they should, check out your work. And you work on one leg, right? I mean, basically you work with one good leg and get the work done. And I was amazed because I saw that and I was like, oh man, how long is he going to be off his feet for? Like, how is he going to do this? And like, yeah, like you're saying, like, 1 week, week and a half, like you were back out there finishing the job.
Yeah, with the torn ACL, baby.
Yeah.
Won't
And
stop
yeah,
anybody.
I love, and even like you put in some crazy lights in there, and I was like watching, and I was like, oh man, this is cool. And then actually, something you just posted recently, I don't know if it was your job that you were actually working on, but what did you put? You put like what did you put like a 42-inch tub in a 40-inch space or something like that? Was that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
again?
yeah. So I did a job, and so their bathtub. I don't know what was in there before. It wasn't a bathtub, I can tell you that. I think it was just a shower. But I went to the homeowner. It was actually a friend from high school that moved back to the area that hired me. And I was like, hey man, just to let you know, your space is like 58.5 inches, and a standard tub is 60 inches. I don't know if this is gonna fit or not. But we got super creative. I chopped off like half of the room. Luckily none of the walls are like load bearing in that house, so I could do that. But yeah, it was quite the feat fitting that 60-inch tub in the 58.5 inch space. So
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting.
yeah, if you actually like look at it, like the wall was here and like the tub was like standing over here. So if you look straight, it cut like almost all the tub out. Luckily that it's a big tub with like a huge area for like landing. So that I could drop like the surround down on. But if it was like a small landing, I don't think it would have worked.
Ah. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on. I mean, you kind of covered so much good stuff, like you already talked about trials and tribulations and kind of, the risk involved with, wholesaling, fix and flipping. But so maybe before we wrap up, let's see. I mean, you covered a lot of stuff. So what new advice, what have you not touched on if someone wanted to get into, let's say, I guess just really or side hustle, just any like you're saying, thinking about starting their journey differently. Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
So I think the number one advice I can give to somebody is you won't be ready to start a side hustle until you get your mindset right. That's like one of the main things I focus on my podcast. It's just mindset in general. Um, until you start wanting to self-educate yourself about a thing or something, that's where that's where you truly start to become a different person. And either that like that burning fire inside is once you start that mindset journey, I think that's really where the switch kicks. Because then you're just not happy going home and putting on Netflix and chilling on the couch and not trying to better yourself. It doesn't have to happen overnight. I've been going to the gym consistently for 10 years. I haven't seen crazy results, but if I look back at pictures from 10 years ago, I'm way bigger. Like the transformation from 10 years ago to now is crazy. It just doesn't seem like that big of a deal because it's been over 10-year journey. So like, start that mindset journey as soon as you can, because once you get that, people recognize, even if it's in your corporate job, people will recognize that you're a little bit more serious and that you take the time to self-educate and things like that. And I think that makes a huge difference.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, I kind of just want to touch on what you kind of brought up, and then sometimes it doesn't hit the ground running. Like a side hustle, or like you're saying, the wholesaling or whatnot. So sometimes leveraging, and it got you thinking a little bit differently. Like you're talking about the handyman side of you can make good money, this much money per hour, and now you're leveraging that to hire virtual assistants. Because if I make this much money here and only cost me this much money to hire someone here, that's a better route for me. And I think that's what some people forget when they're getting started. They just want to get rid of the W-2, or they want to get rid of their whatever their job they're working at. And sometimes you got to leverage that in the beginning to start this, side hustle or whatever other path that you want to head down.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with you. I would advise anybody to pretty much keep their W-2 income until they get to a point where they either know that it's holding them back from their other thing, or they surpass income, or like, time wise that they're spending on that, that's what I would suggest, because at the end of the day, if you can leverage, somebody else paying you every 2 weeks, that's a wonderful thing.
All right. I love it. Well, thanks for coming on. And, before we wrap up, tell them what your podcast, where they can find it again, and social
Yeah.
media. And I'll put all the links below.
Yeah. So podcast is called The Gap, and it can be found. You can search Gregory Behling too. It can be found on Spotify, podcast, Apple Podcast. I need to do a better job at uploading it on YouTube. But it is a video podcast as well. So yeah, you can go there. You can find it. G Behling 23 is my Instagram. I typically, maybe I'll rebrand it right after this. Like I'll look to see if Good Guy Greg is available. And then that'll be, I typically post all links to like my podcast on there. So if you end up following me on there, that's another place that you can, hop over to it. So
Yeah. And if you invest in Pittsburgh, right, House Whiz, right? Handyman or
yeah, House with his handyman. I'll tell you this. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a discount. So if you want work done, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it like super cheap. Like, so
it's quality work. That's why they say,
it is quality. It is
Yeah.
quality. So
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll catch up again. But if I don't see you or talk to you, man, happy holidays, man.
yeah, man. I'd love to have you on my podcast next. So
Oh yeah, let's do it,
let's
man.
do that. So all right.
Or we can do it live. Maybe when I get to Pittsburgh one day. But that might actually be a while. Maybe we gotta do it recording first.
One day. We're doing
Yeah.
it next week.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right.
All
Cool,
right,
man.
man.
Thanks,
We'll
man.
see you.
All right.
All right. Bye.